Welcome to Inspiration Hour. And Kelly, it is such a pleasure for you to be here and joining me today in the middle of the new abnormal is
yes.
my favorite new term for
I don't want it to be normal.
Right. Well, this is the new abnormal. I think that's accurate. And yeah, we're all starting to settle in a little bit to it. But if you don't mind, can you introduce yourself?
Sure.
Great.
Yep. So, and thank you for having me. This was kind of a great surprise to be asked to be a part of this. So, Kelly Kozeliski, I am a New Mexico native. I live in Colorado. Been in Colorado since I was 18 and went to school in Greeley, and I've really been here ever since. I'm a CPA by schooling. I've been in public accounting since the day I got out of college. So thankfully, gainfully employed in this crazy time as well. But I have two kiddos, a 2-year-old little guy named Thomas and a 6-year-old Paige, who is homeschooling kindergarten. So that's been fun. I think we're settling into the new abnormal on that front. And then I've been married to my husband, Ian, since 2011, and he's a CPA as well. He's a tax guy. I'm in the audit space. I'm an audit partner with Plante Moran. So I don't know if our children are going to be blessed or cursed in terms of careers in accounting. I have a feeling they may end up with lots of tattoos and blue hair, but we'll see.
Two straight-laced parents with...
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Well, one of the things at Rise that we always like to do is, and I kind of flip-flopped a little bit, but as you introduce yourself, and I neglected to mention this, tell us about, I think it's, we know where you, kind of getting to know where you've come from a little bit.
Sure.
My favorite things to know, one of our kind of consistent questions we like to ask all of our interviewees when we sit down for conversations is, tell us, what was your first job? Not like first job necessarily at a college, but your very first job ever.
The very first job ever, I'm pretty sure it was probably against child labor laws at the time, but my father and his family owned a concrete company and a sand and gravel business. So I want to say it was 3rd or 4th grade. In the summer times, my sister, who's a year older, and my dad would have us come in. We would answer phones. And literally it was every summer, every time we had time off from school, answer phones, clean the bathrooms, the truck driver bathrooms as well, not just in the office. Take customer orders. We got to talk to some of the drivers on the radio as we matured a little bit in our customer service skills. But yeah, pretty much spent every summer and time off there up until right before I went to college. And my grandfather, before he died, he owned the company, and then it got passed down. But when he was in charge, he fired a couple of my cousins a few times. If you were late, you just couldn't come back to work.
Didn't matter.
We never saw
if you were blood.
Right. We never saw our paycheck. We got the deposit slip receipt. And so just went into a fund and, over time helped build some college savings. So yeah, I maybe learned some cleaning skills and some customer service skills in that first job.
Well, and I think that's cool because it's there's never, I like to have, anytime I've ever hired an intern up to a business partner, it's there is literally nothing I will ever ask you to do that I would not do myself, that I'm not doing, including getting down on your hands and knees and scrubbing a toilet. It's hey, got to keep the world going around here at this business.
And one of the things I remember was making coffee for all of the drivers. And one of the people in the dispatch office, she taught me this trick about putting salt and crushed ice in the big coffee pots that were glass, kind of swirled it around, and it gets rid of all that grime on the bottom of coffee pots. So
here you go.
I was literally in 4th grade when I learned that, and I still do it.
I love it. This is practical stuff. And now we're learning some real hard-hitting things at the beginning of this conversation too. So
Right. Nothing to do with accounting.
Well, also, I know that you mentioned at the beginning that you're a partner with Plante Moran, but again, and like kind of what is your role? Tell me about, especially at this interesting time. I mean,
Yeah.
tax day, but it's not, or was that yesterday? But so
technically today. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like technically it was supposed to be. So what an interesting time to be involved in the accounting industry. And as you said, things have been as busy as ever.
They have.
But in a different way, I suspect.
In a lot different way. So I've been with Plante Moran for just under 2 years now. So our firm here in Denver, KSNH, we merged with Plante Moran back in 2018. But I've been a partner in public accounting since 2012.
Okay.
But so I'm an audit partner and I lead our healthcare and insurance practice out of the Rocky Mountain region. So we have we're a national firm. Headquartered out of the Detroit area. But so I serve clients in the healthcare space. So anything from, a physician practice that's backed by private equity dollars to some of our largest health systems in Colorado. And then also health insurers. So really my clients that I get to interact with every day are pretty busy doing other things and not wanting to really worry about an audit or their tax returns. And so a lot of those deadlines have been delayed. But certainly we're kind of at the forefront with them, helping them through all of the crazy things that are happening and impacting them. And especially since we've been kind of remote and with the federal dollars coming in, a lot of our time has been on the phone, talking with clients about that. But in a way, it's weird, but nice. I mean, in this environment, people just want to interact and talk to other people. So it's not always down to business. I think I've enjoyed just like connecting with people as we're all kind of in our basement offices trying to get through, our day-to-day in our jobs. So we've got kids running around in the background.
Totally. Well, one of the things that's been really, I think one of my bigger takeaways, I think, is that, I have a 2-year-old. I'm balancing the work from home and I've been a perfectionist and a type A my entire life. And so success for me has often in my life come from, having a prescribed levels of, of achievement or, I don't know, kind of a corporate environment often sometimes can be a gratifying place for a type A because it really prescribes success. And whether you work in a corporate environment or you're a startup or a small business right now, whatever was normal and whatever, for the most part, we found to be success and doing like all the benchmarks for doing a good job have kind of shifted. So which gets me thinking about, your definition of success. I think, some of the most high achieving women that I've met, their definition of success really evolves over their career and over their life. Yeah. And so I'm curious for you, what does success look like and feel like for you now versus maybe how it used to feel when you first got started in your career?
Yeah. I think I can relate, total type A and, really prescribed. And what I loved about, I remember being in college asking a professor, and I knew I was wanting to be an accounting major, but I was like, okay, what happens after college? Right. And this concept of public accounting was so prescribed in terms of, levels of achievement and progressing, et cetera. So certainly starting out, that was what I viewed it as, is what came next in terms of title and promotion and that sort of thing. Yeah. And I mentioned my kiddos. I would say between getting married and having someone in the same profession and then having kids, the kid part totally humbled me in terms of kind of titles don't necessarily matter. But I think really around the time I had kids, my first kid, and then as I, worked on having an additional kiddo, that was a bit of a struggle too and changed my perspective. But it's shifted from kind of my own kind of climbing the rungs, if you will, to I really get gratification and feel successful when I see that I'm able to help other people do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's flipped for me. It's not necessarily about what I'm doing or where I'm going. It's kind of helping my team get to where they want to go. And I don't know if that's some of just the female motherly instinct that kicked in, differently after I had kids, but it's really more about helping the people on my team achieve what they want to do and what I think they're capable of doing. I really get energy out of doing that. So in this new environment too, being remote, it's kind of hard because
it's hard.
I'm used to people just coming in and out of my office a lot. It drives my assistant crazy because I don't necessarily stick to my calendar. But having that people interaction and helping folks, that's how I define it career-wise. And then, of course, on the family front, getting my kindergartner to do her PE is probably the biggest challenge. If I can get that nailed down, that's successful at home these days.
For sure. When hearing you talk about that, I think that's the hallmark of a great leader and they always say it's like the best leaders aren't thinking about like what gets me ahead or how you keep the ship moving forward. It's how can I support my team and how can I get out of their way and how can I be supportive as opposed to be the one out in front doing the doing and the success. So that's, I think, super cool. And you mentioned
shifting from being the doer to the like encourager and seeing them do it for themselves. Yeah.
Well, so then you mentioned, I think that's another dynamic that changes too as you rise through the ranks, is, once you become a manager and you start being a leader and you start looking at your team and your needs and your things that need to be done. So as you start looking and hiring, how are you identifying great talent? Like, how do you know when someone is a great fit for your team? Or what's your philosophy when it goes into identifying talent?
Yep, that's a great question. And I think I've always been lucky, in choosing where I've worked or kind of had my career. And I've been at a few firms along the way, but so much of it, and it sounds cheesy and you hear it, but culture. And honestly, I have really learned to trust my gut. And that's proven to be a lot more successful than always going initially with what looks great on paper. But when it comes to kind of rounding out the team, it's just those self-motivated, honest folks, because you can teach, accounting isn't for everyone, right? And there's some technicalities to it, but there's book things that you can teach and train our people, but you can't teach culture or fit or character. So it really is those interpersonal skills and that just how people connect with someone we might be looking to bring on board is really what will push someone kind of over the finish line for us.
Yeah. Well, so describe your culture, like the culture of the team and the type of company that you like to be part of. What does that culture look and feel like?
Sure. So, and this might be a tag phrase as well, but I think we do live it, but the culture is really, it's service, it's servant leadership. We're in the professional services business, but it's not just about serving our clients. We have this concept of, internal client service. So within our own team, and it doesn't matter if you are answering the phones at the front desk or if you're a partner in the firm, everyone's got a commitment to internally serve one another. And then externally, obviously, as well. Our clients are who pay our bills and keep our doors open. So that goes without saying, but it really is that service mentality and servant leadership and letting everyone know that they can fill that role no matter what their title is at the firm. There's a good camaraderie. Fun. We're very, we're accountants, so we're very principled, but, we have a tagline at our firm that says, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. So always kind of keeping that in mind. And, you know, we've got a lot of risk that we can bring on ourselves personally with our professional licenses, but then as a firm. But I think it's just that character and the servant leadership is really kind of the core of our culture. It's people.
Yeah. Well, I can't help thinking about then your very first job too, that I'm sure helped kind of shape, like, of course, that's the type of company, you know, you've been a hard worker your entire life, and you've, you know, risen from a third grade indentured
right. Yeah. And thankfully, I mean, I had great parents who kind of made sure that I got that. So, I mean, that's part of it too. I mean, I remember my grandfather kind of shaking his finger at me, like lecturing, not that I was in trouble, maybe I was at the time, but just always talking about character and to always have good character in the decisions that you make. And so, and I remember that from a really young age, sitting at their like kitchen table on a Sunday morning. So that's kind of been a real consistent thread throughout kind of how I choose things.
Yeah. Well, do you think that character building has been a key factor in your success, or is there something else that you would identify as sort of the biggest factor that you think is like your success?
You know, I think that is, because I think, you know, you could talk about things like grit and hard work and persistence, but for me, I think that always comes back to character in a way. It's kind of like, what's your makeup, and what character means to me might mean something different to someone else. But I do think, you know, the people that raised me and the people that brought me up in my professional career, you know, part of it is luck, but part of it is choosing who you decide to surround yourself with. And I think those people that I chose to kind of lead me as I was growing had that commonality, and that really kind of fed my desire to kind of keep progressing.
Yeah. Gosh, you know, and I can't help but smiling. That reminds me, you know, at Rise, we have this wall that says, I don't know if you know the quote by Jim Rohn, you know, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that's just something.
Yeah. And sometimes I like that. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to change up the 5 people I'm around right
totally.
now.
Yeah. I'm kind of feeling all down. I'm like, oh, well, and right now I'm like, okay, well, without saying, about a 2-year-old dictator is one of my 5.
Oh my gosh. That would be my 6-year-old.
And then my husband of 10 years. And we're like, oh,
yes,
we're like really together a lot. So
I know it shifts.
Yes, it does. But yeah, but it's like, that's the other awesome thing about technology through all of this too, which I'm so grateful for, is it's like, oh my gosh, I've been actually FaceTiming, and not just Zooming, but like FaceTiming with even relatives and friends that normally wouldn't necessarily probably be in my 5, but because and, you know, it ends up just being coworkers and stuff, but all of a sudden I'm able to prioritize and loop people in that maybe they're not, you know, when it comes to minutes in the day, my 5,
right,
people that I've like lost touch with, or that it was more like passive that we were connected. And now, you know, family members and friends that I haven't connected with in a long time, suddenly with technology,
you can.
Yeah, or it has to bring awareness that it's like, ooh, that felt really good to have that deep conversation with, you know, a member, or a member of Rise, or a colleague, or a neighbor, or a friend. And it's like, wow, when all of this is over and I'm able to be a little bit more, you know, intentional.
More intentional. Yeah.
Like, ooh, I actually want this person. You know, how will my 5 shift a little
Yeah,
bit?
it's not just happenstance because of who may be in the office or in your immediate surroundings. Yeah, we're thinking about who we're going to reach out to a little bit differently.
Yeah. I keep trying to focus on all those positives, because there really are, I think, going to be some really huge silver linings for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. We've got to remind ourselves of those some days.
There's some days when I don't see them, but you know, there's days when I have the vision to see it, then yes.
Yeah.
Well, so, okay, we talked a lot about success. Talk to me. Sometimes I think the biggest markers of success are failure, though, and sort of that concept of whether it's failing forward, feeling up, but you know, how failures really shape us. So talk to me about maybe 1 or 2 of, you know, failures that you've had that ended up being really important in shaping who you are and your success in your career.
Yeah. So It's always interesting when you think about, and again, this kind of goes back to my comment on having kids has humbled me, because you realize, like, yes, if you have the ability to have kids, it's like a superpower, because you don't realize what that all entails until you go through it. Yeah. But, probably one of the bigger humbling moments in my career was going from 1 kid to 2 kids and having that be a struggle. And it wasn't sometimes you can think of that as like a personal failure, but if I convert it over to kind of career, really just figuring out that it was fine for me to kind of hit pause in a different sort of way. So it wasn't a failure, but it was a choice to stop going so hard and to shift focus in terms of priority. So I thought, that was really important. And then at the same time, thinking, I'm in public accounting and we have a lot of women, but in terms of leaders at the time, me assuming that the folks who led me at the time were going to judge what I wanted to do differently because they were men and I was a woman. And that wasn't the case. So kind of facing that fear of saying, here's exactly what's going on. Here's exactly what I need to do. Yeah. And then to realize, hey, everybody's human and goes through life experiences, and to just put myself out there with a huge fear of failing. And then ultimately actually got all the support in the world tenfold to kind of do what I needed to do. And for me to like take the foot off the pedal a little bit in terms of career progression was super hard. Yeah. But at the same time, it was really rewarding to know that I could do that at the firm I was with and have it be successful and not be judged or limited by other people. It was the choices I was making and being okay with it.
Yeah. And
so that was a big life-changing thing, both personally and career-wise. Yeah. And then just in terms of, I wouldn't call it failures, but missed opportunities. And this is where I'm glad I chose the husband that I have, because he's, we're kind of yin and yang. He's a tax guy. He's a little more introverted. He is more skeptical. So when I'm always pie in the sky and glass half full, he'll sometimes bring me down to reality when it needs to happen, in terms of, not just assuming that I'm going to get what I deserve because someone's going to notice. So you hear that a lot, that women don't necessarily always ask. So I would say there's been a few points in my progression since I've been a partner where I just made the assumption that people will notice or see the numbers or whatever the case may be in terms of salary or becoming an equity partner, things along those lines. Yeah. And instead of making that assumption, really advocating for myself, I wish I would have done that sooner. Because it's amazing once you tell people what you want and why you deserve it. Sometimes you just have to do that. You can't assume they're gonna just go with the flow because you are. Yeah. So it was a disservice I did to myself the first couple of years I was a partner. Yeah. And I have my husband to thank for prodding me a little bit with a hot iron.
I think that's huge though. And yeah, and I don't know if that's something, male, female, or an age and experience, but, or even just like the awareness that in fact, no one is thinking about you nearly as much as you think that
the same, right? Yeah.
So they're probably, if you don't say, this is what I need and this is why I need it or what I deserve, it's like, oh, great. Because I was thinking, your bosses or your clients or whoever it may be, or even spouses and friends, it's like, oh, because I was just busy. They were busy thinking about themselves, because really, right, this is what we do. And so that's really powerful advice, I think, or realization for you and to show people is, get out of your way, realize that no one's a better cheerleader and advocate for you than you. And
that's right. Yeah.
That's huge.
And I think some things that, my husband, but then, it kind of goes back to like trusting my gut. Like when something just wasn't feeling quite right about where I was at or where I was going, there were two distinct times, even since I got to, what I thought was my ultimate career achievement in becoming a partner, you kind of realize, okay, so if you do that when you're 35, you kind of have the like half of your career still ahead of you. So it's like, okay, then what? But there's been 2 points where I've felt a little bit stuck, and I've gotten a career coach and really kind of laid out what is it that's making me feel like I'm stuck, or that I'm not getting, or I'm not kind of feeling fulfilled the way I want to in the role that I'm in. And I'm kind of a type, what do I need to do? Let's get it done. And kind of resetting in that environment, in a true professional coaching environment, was really successful for me both times.
Good.
So I would encourage people to do that for themselves. I mean, it was really valuable.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a blessing and a curse when you get a coach, is that then they get to know you, and and then it's
like a mirror, which you need sometimes. Yeah.
And then sometimes they hear the things that you need to hear the most. I mean, that's really why you're hiring them. I mean, wouldn't it be awesome to hire a coach and have them just be like, gosh, you're nailing it. You're just nothing wrong. You're doing everything right. But we really want them to give tough feedback. And so how do you manage and incorporate that when you receive it from your coach or from a spouse or from an employee, when you get tough feedback, bringing it to life and really making it useful and growing as a person or a professional through it?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I learned, I welcome that feedback because, whether you believe it or not, I think perception is reality. And I've learned, even if I don't think that, what I'm putting out there is that other people are perceiving XYZ. And sometimes it is obviously very true feedback. But to not take it as a personal attack. And I think that's come with maybe age more so than anything else, is to let the personal sting roll and to really be constructive about it, because folks are not going to give you feedback if they don't care. And I think that's been a really important lesson to me as well. I mean, the people that aren't talking to you and giving you that guidance, I would rather be around people that give me a little bit more tough love than everything's pie in the sky. Because once everything's pie in the sky for too long, that's when I start to feel stuck, like you're not progressing, because everything should feel at some point like a little bit uncomfortable. Otherwise you're not growing. And sometimes that feedback gets you to that uncomfortable spot to kind of shift.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There was something earlier this year that I was asked to do something, and I was like, every single ounce of my body was like, no, 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 no. That sounds painful and terrible and scary. And then I was like, oh, shoot. That means I should probably say yes, because it probably means it's a huge growth moment and a huge growth opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'll be really glad that I said yes and did this. And of course, lo and behold, I am. But but yeah.
Like once you can make it over that hump, but yeah, it'll give you a weird feeling in the pit of your stomach until you actually just do it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Make a shift. Yeah.
So as I said, it's not tax day, but it was going to be for a while, and
it's extended now till July.
Yeah, well, and another CPA I was talking with said, it's not like people are saying, oh no, don't do my taxes anymore because it's delayed. No. And if anything, a lot of people are saying, okay, I need to know how much money I have. If I'm going to get a refund, I need it now. And I need to get this, taken care of. So it's like, oh wow, things have actually ramped up despite the delay. So, and you're also married to someone who is working on a similar so you're working really long, tough hours. How do you keep your energy? And now you're juggling homeschooling and kid management too. So what do you do to keep your energy and creativity and motivation high?
Good question. I think definitely took a couple weeks of the new abnormal to figure out what that is. But with, my husband, so I was thinking about this the other day, like I really miss my commute because it was kind of a reset time for me. So we've had to kind of find that within our own household. So, and it's pretty much every night. Sometimes my kids get baths twice a day because they're bored. But at night, my husband will do a bath and they could be in there for 45 minutes longer than my old commute time. And that's my time to call a friend, talk to my sister, my parents, those people you're choosing to talk to, or, just have a glass of wine and binge watch a show. Or, that's really been my reset time. Or if the kitchen's a mess, I will spend that time feeling like I've got control over the kitchen again to like make myself feel a little more balanced about kind of the things that are out of our control throughout the day, every day. So I would say that time I'm getting every evening is huge.
Yeah.
And then, I work at a great firm and I have a lot of great friends there. And I have, both partners and non-partners who were kind of in this like same boat together, right? I've got 2 really close friends who have young kids. All 3 of us are audit partners. So it's like having that little release of a group text of like, I've kind of had enough for today. What's everybody else up to? So just having a safe spot to vent a little bit and then put yourself in check and be like, okay, there's a whole lot else going on in the world. And these are our first world gripes that we can spend 10 minutes on to kind of get it out and then kind of get perspective again, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think it's like, okay, that me time, I think that's maybe one of those silver lining things too, that I'm being more intentional about taking it now.
Yeah.
But it's like, we need that all the time, whether a global pandemic is occurring or not. It's just like identifying like the power and the re-energy that comes from connecting with others or taking care of yourself, or similar to, as you were saying with like the advocating for yourself. It's like, I need my commute time. I need that time again. That's
right.
really cool that you've identified that, and can maybe carry it through.
Or even, last Friday, I had lots of big deadlines, got through them. And it feels weird to say you're going to take a day off from home. I was like, no, I canceled everything on my calendar. I hung out with my kids. On Friday evening, my husband was like, we'll just stay out of your hair for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And so, it was just trying to find ways to force that like reset time has been huge. Because at the beginning, we all felt like, oh, we'll be back in the office in 14 days, So it's kind of building that back into the schedule in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that we can, do all the time.
Yes, or should. Yeah.
Yeah, should. Yeah. So one of the things that I mentioned, that Jim Rohn quote, speaking about the average of the 5 people. And so maybe 5 feels like a lot, but when you think back maybe over your life and career, I know you've mentioned your family and stuff as well, but 5 people, or when you think about who your 5 are, it doesn't necessarily be listing all 5, but some of the people that really were the most influential on making you who you are today and getting you where you are.
Yes, it's like I immediately always go to my paternal grandmother. And she was a stay-at-home mom. So almost the opposite of how I'm driven, but I think she is always top of mind, but I think it's because, I know it's because of how she treated people.
Yeah.
So when we were little, she was the grandma that we had 10 cousins who all lived in the same small town in New Mexico, but she would gather some of us up in the back of her car and we would, deliver cookies to her friends who couldn't get out of the house and sit and visit with them, or we would do volunteer projects with her or church projects with her. So I think that spirit of like people focused and serving came from her. She was also not a very good cook, so maybe I get that from her as well. And her being okay to even order in like way back in the day. I think I learned that from her as well. So certainly on like the personal front, there's her. I grew up with a mom who worked full time. She was in hospital administration. I think that's where I get my healthcare bend. But you know, she grew up in a little bit different time than we're all in too. So from my mom, there's that drive, but it's also she can sometimes tend to be like, well, I had to deal with blah, 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 just get over it. So from her, I get a little bit of what I don't want to do in terms of navigating kind of a corporate environment. But certainly had what it felt like to have two working parents, and they made it work, and I didn't know any different. And so I think it's easier for me and my husband because that was the environment that I had when I was growing up. Yeah. And then in terms of folks in my career, it's men leaders who actually don't even have daughters, but who were the folks that mentored me and still mentor me, and were really champions of me. And when I came to them, and I'm thinking of like our former CEO, Bob Hotman, who still works at Plante Moran, when I came to him and said, okay, here's what I'm hearing in the firm to kind of start our women's leadership initiative. And I mean, 1000% support. I mean, it was basically, he knew I was conservative. It's basically like, don't have a budget, ask for forgiveness later, tell me what you want to do and we'll do it. So to have folks like that, and he is so people focused, it's not even funny. So those are the folks I, just gravitate towards, but he's one that sticks out. And then I had a partner, I started my career at Arthur Andersen, and he was just positive as all get out. And he was very conscientious about, our team, who we worked with on a day in, day out basis, and just that fit and dynamic of, I learned how to choose good people to work with from how I saw him doing that. So he's been pretty influential too. And someone I still talk to, send Christmas cards to, and we haven't worked together in, 12, 13 years.
No, that's powerful. And I like that you acknowledge too, that's like, those are men, and men without daughters even, but that,
right.
And even circling back, that, you said that you made these assumptions about what they would think, and, hearing them say no and assuming that's what they would say. And I think that's really cool and powerful. And, but, accounting, is it a male dominated industry? Or I know you mentioned, you're like, oh, there's a lot of financial, it seems like a really diverse industry.
It is. So the stats coming out of college. So I graduated in 2000, and that was the first year industry-wide that graduating classes were 50-50. Now it's actually coming out of college much more female. Maybe it's 60-40 female. But when you look at top leadership and women in partnership and women who are equity partners, it can range at firms, and this is kind of broad sweep, anywhere from like 5% on the low end to 25% on the high end. So we lose folks kind of in the middle management pre-partner. So it's still heavily dominated in terms of who's running the management in the public accounting firms.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting. Well, and I had the opportunity, I looked and noticed this awesome little feature in Zoom that's popping up with the Q&A. And one of our attendees Julie, who was amazing. Halunga to introduce us to you.
Oh, Julie, yeah.
Yeah. So she asked a really great question that before we close out, I want to make sure to, I'd love to hear, what are you and the firm doing these days to support female leaders, especially during these times?
Well, a lot. So,
Right.
we've had to morph it because we didn't know how temporary or not temporary we're going to be in this environment. So we actually have what we call Women in Leadership. It's a firm-wide initiative at every office in our firm. And so even in this remote environment, our folks in Colorado, we call them our office champions, we're still meeting and talking once a month to get a pulse on, what are our females up to, making sure everyone has resources, that the firm is, providing daycare to folks, but really making sure they know what's available, encouraging folks to kind of not feel guilty about doing curbside pickup and just some of those constant reminders of not to feel guilty about trying to find ways to make it work for them while they're kind of homeschooling and doing all these other crazy things at the same time. But then also trying to understand how we're going to start to plan virtual events, because a lot of what the Women in Leadership group does as well is connecting with our clients and, just referrals and folks in the community who we're used to interacting with. So we've shifted our group now to kind of be a little bit more outwardly facing too, in terms of kind of that serving and connecting aspect of it as well. But right now it's a lot of connecting and making sure everyone feels like they've got an outlet to figure things out as they're trying to find their new abnormal. I'm going to start using that.
Good. Well, and obviously, with Rise Collaborative, we're all about community, and that's, I think, probably the most powerful. I couldn't be a bigger champion of community. So I love hearing that even in a very traditional corporate environment that you guys are recognizing the importance of it and advocating for women to, and men, but women to advocate for themselves and to foster that community and for really to be the supports that your team needs right now. So I think and then your clients need. So bravo.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all this time. Sis, and I know it's a busy time for you, for all of us. And so I'm really grateful that you were willing to spare so much time to.
Of course, it's nap time right now also. So it worked out beautifully.
Yes, my monitor's right over there.
That's awesome.
Well timed. So I'm glad it worked out for you guys.
Good. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys asking. And thanks, Julie, for the question. I missed chatting with you as well.
Oh, yeah. So we're all going to get together for big in-person hugs and celebrations soon, hopefully.
I hope so. I hope so.
Good. And for all of the folks who joined us online, thank you so much for being a part of our day. And I look forward to seeing and chatting with everybody again soon. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Great. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.